Wendy, is dinner ready yet? I'm getting hungry. Huh? It's only 11 o'clock. Mother, you woke up late this morning. And we had a late breakfast, so I thought a later lunch would be better. Oh, I don't remember eating. Maybe that's a sign of good health. Your father's saying he's hungry too. Is that so? Alright, I'll start preparing now. Such things should be done without me having to say it. You really are an inconsiderate daughter-in-law. Clean our room too. It's been a week, and it's dusty. My mother-in-law treats her daughter-in-law like a servant, taking her for granted. I can't help but think if she's healthy enough, she should be able to clean and prepare meals herself. I, Wendy Hanson, a 30-year-old working housewife, don't understand why she stopped doing things she presumably did herself before her son got married. I've continued working at the foreign company I joined before getting married. There's overtime, but rarely any work on weekends. I should be able to rest. But I'm kept busy with housework and errands for my in-laws from early morning till late at night. My husband doesn't lift a finger to help me, even though I'm being overworked by his parents. I had no preference for living with or apart from in-laws. So when my husband suggested living with his parents after marriage, I had no objections. But now, I'm starting to think it was a mistake. We can live rent-free at my parents' house, he said. I thought, I never planned to live there for free. But I thought it'd be cheaper than renting elsewhere. So we pay for utilities as a substitute for rent. We split the food expenses with my in-laws, but they eat a lot despite their age. I feel like we're paying more than our share, but it's probably cheaper than renting a place. I wanted to continue working after marriage, so having my in-laws around seemed reassuring. I thought it would be easier if we shared household chores. When I work late, my husband has already finished dinner with his parents. Coming home late to prepare dinner might be easier, but they never save a portion for me. I thought it was natural for both working spouses to share household chores. My husband said the same before we got married. I can easily handle housework. Leave it to me. I thought he had been doing various chores, but after marriage, it turned out he did nothing. My mother-in-law did all the laundry, cleaning, and tidying. He won't even make microwave meals. So even if I'm working late and he gets home early, he never prepares dinner. Maybe it's better that my mother-in-law is there, but my husband's silence, even when my portion isn't prepared, is disappointing. He doesn't help with the cleanup either. Dirty dishes are left on the table, and used pots and utensils are left in the kitchen. I have to clean up after a meal I didn't even eat. Coming home tired from work and having to do this is hard. My husband, who gets a break from preparing dinner, says it as if he's got it easy, which doesn't sit well with me. In this house, everyone thinks cleaning and laundry are the wife's job. My in-laws don't clean their room at all. On my days off, there's always a pile of chores, as if they're deliberately made. My father-in-law is 68, and my mother-in-law is 65, but they're very energetic and talkative. They seem healthier than me and capable of doing housework. Well, it's good they're healthy. It'd be much harder if they needed care. That's true, but remember, you can always come back home if it gets too tough. You have a place here. Don't endure to the point of wanting to escape, Mom. But you have your own hardships, right? Don't overdo it yourself. I can manage because my mother listens to my complaints. But now I have another worry. My father's health is poor, and he's hospitalized. It seems he's not doing too well. My parents are a very close couple, and my mother is at the hospital almost every day. I try to visit the hospital as much as I can. But it's hard to find the time between work and chores at my in-laws. When I finally manage to visit, my father looks genuinely happy to see me. Seeing his happy face brings me relief, but it pains me to see him getting thinner each time I visit. My mother must feel the same way. Mom, are you getting enough rest? You look pale. I'm fine, really. Please take care of yourself. Mother laughs and says, I know, but she really looks pale and unwell. I worry about her, worn out from nursing my father. Despite knowing about my father's hospitalization, my husband doesn't visit. And my in-laws act as if it's none of their concern and keep giving me tasks. Well, I'm not the kind of daughter-in-law who just does as she's told. I sometimes push back, especially against my father-in-law, who frequently says bothersome things. I don't always just say yes, yes, to him. Wendy, can you rub my back? I'm tired too, so that's not possible. Why not buy a massage device? Or ask your wife or Ralph. It's a wife's job. I don't think so. He's still active, playing golf and singing karaoke. There's no need for me to do so much. Wendy, I'm going to take a bath now. Can you wash my back? No. Ask your wife. It's no fun being washed by an old lady. I wonder what kind of fun he's talking about. He's been like this since our marriage, which coincided with his retirement. When I tell my husband, he unbelievably suggests, just wash his back. It's ridiculous. Even with my real father, I've never done such a thing. To me, father-in-law is just another old man. Frankly, it feels creepy. 3 years into our marriage, things haven't improved with my in-laws who dump housework on me. A husband who helps with nothing, and no signs of change. They don't even worry when they hear my family is sick. I'm starting to think it would be better to go back home and take care of my father with my mother. I've got a business trip for a week starting this weekend. Is that so? I'll be busy with evening entertainments. Don't contact me unless it's urgent. It's embarrassing to have constant calls from a wife. Understood. I wouldn't contact him unnecessarily. I'm also working, I'm not that idle. Besides, I've never contacted him during work before. 2 days after Ralph left for his trip, on Monday, I received a call from my mother at work. She's never called me during work hours before. Something must have happened to my father. I quickly answered. Wendy, your father's condition has suddenly worsened. Her voice, crying over the phone, echoes in my ears. My legs start to shake. I'm coming there right now. After speaking with my boss, who told me to go immediately, I rushed to the hospital in a taxi. But what awaited us at the hospital was a cruel reality. When I arrived, my mother wasn't in my father's room. Are you Ms. Hansen, the daughter of Mr. Hansen? You've just arrived, right? Where's my mother? My question was met with the nurse looking down, her face full of unease. About that. Seeing that expression, my heart pounds heavily. Your mother, she passed away. What? I couldn't comprehend what was said for a moment. I had rushed to the hospital after receiving a call from my mother about my father's sudden change in condition. Yet now, they were saying she had passed away. It made no sense. Come this way. The nurse led me to a different room, with a single bed. Someone covered with a white sheet lay there. I couldn't believe it was my mother. Despite my disbelief, I gently pulled back the sheet with trembling hands. It was undoubtedly my mother's face. She lay there, silent and still. Why? According to the nurse, after calling me, my mother had returned to my father's room. A while later, a nurse found her lying face down on the bed, still holding my father's hand. When the nurse rushed over, it turned out that she had already passed away. It might have been a heart attack. As the nurse spoke, another nurse appeared. Ms. Hansen. Your father. At the same moment I returned to my father's room, he passed away. No. I felt as if all strength left my body. I couldn't comprehend what had just happened, how both my parents could have departed together. This reality seemed unbelievable. Unable to process this reality, I stood there, stunned. Wendy Hansen thought, I have to let Ralph know. In my daze, I remembered I needed to contact my husband. With shaking hands, I took out my phone and called him. As I listened to the ringing, the reality of my parents' deaths hit me. And tears started flowing uncontrollably. Hello? Ralph?
Um,
But what's up? I'm at work. But it's urgent. Mom and Dad, What? They're gone. Struggling to hold back my sobs, I managed to get the words out. Both of them, they're gone. Both? How? An accident? No, but I don't know what to do. Despite my voice reaching him through sobs, my husband's response over the phone came without any hint of panic, coldly echoing in my mind. Did you forget what I said before my trip? I'm on a business trip. Don't call me for things like this. I couldn't immediately understand what he said. It was so far from what I had expected. I thought I must have misheard, but his words were so shocking that my tears stopped. What did you just say? I told you not to call unless it's really urgent. My parents died. Isn't that an emergency? If they were about to die, I'd understand, but calling after they're already gone is pointless. That's not an emergency. What are you talking about? You'll come back right away, won't you? Why? It's meaningless for me to rush back now. I'm busy, so... My husband ended the call and never answered my calls again. After that, I contacted my mother-in-law. My parents have passed away. Wasn't it just your father who was sick? Yes, but both of them. Oh dear, they must have been a very close couple. Isn't it nice they went together? You know, they say close couples go to heaven together. It must have been their wish. What are you saying? Well, you'll be busy now with the wake and funeral. It's a good thing it's both of them at once, less trouble. Oh, your father-in-law and I will pass on attending. You handle it. What? Going there might make us feel unwell. The living's health is more important than those who've passed. I realized then, like a father, like a son. But this brought me back to reality. I informed my boss about my parents' passing. Unlike my husband and in-laws, my boss, though a stranger, was very concerned and even helped me arrange the funeral. Without him, I would have been lost. I thought my husband would at least return for the funeral, but he never came back. Even after it was over. Thanks to my boss, colleagues, friends, and relatives, I managed to see my parents off. The real sorrow hit me when I returned home from the funeral home with my parents' portraits. And all the relatives had left. I couldn't believe they were both gone so suddenly that I'd never see them again. It felt like a bad dream. Facing my parents' portraits, I spoke to them. This can't be true. Dad, Mom. Even if you were close, this is a lie, right? If you're not here, it's just me when I come home. I hugged their portraits and cried like a child. But after crying, I realized this was the harsh reality. My husband who didn't come to support me, my in-laws who didn't even show up at the funeral. I had no family to support me anymore. And then anger towards my husband started to bubble up. Where could a husband be who doesn't come when his wife's parents suddenly pass away? To dismiss it as something as trivial as being busy at work is unthinkable for any normal person. I was ready to make a decision. 5 days after the funeral, 3 days later than planned, my husband returned home. Acting as if nothing had happened. I couldn't understand how he could be so unaffected. Hey, is your parents' funeral over? Of course. How long do you think it's been? Well, I extended my trip by 3 days to avoid the funeral fuss. No? Must have been nice for you. It wasn't fun, it was work. But you're lucky now. No more worries about your parents' old age, and there's the insurance money. It's all good news, isn't it? His face lit up with a smile. I couldn't believe he was the same person, completely unfeeling and alien. Are you seriously saying that?
Yeah.
And how much of that money will come to me? What? Of course, right? A wife's money is her husband's, isn't it? Hearing my husband's words made me want to cry. I wondered why I had married such a man and felt pathetic for it. As I fell silent, Ralph looked around the room. Finally, he seemed to notice that the house looked different. Huh? The room looks pretty tidy, doesn't it? I cleaned up. What? Like a decluttering, same as your parents? His words made my fists clench involuntarily. How far would he go to irritate others? Not a single word of kindness to a wife grieving her parents' loss. But he didn't understand reality. I was about to teach him. I took a deep breath and looked up at him. I'm going on a long business trip. Please take good care of your father and mother. What? He looked around the house again, probably not understanding my words yet. By the way, where are my parents? Did they go shopping? You finally noticed they're not here? What? Where did they go? To the hospital. They hurt their backs and are hospitalized. My in-laws, taking advantage of my absence during my parents' funeral, tried to move the antique furniture from my room to theirs. They both ended up with severe back pain. When I returned home after the funeral, they were immobile and in agony. They had been unable to move for 2 days, without food or drink, and even had accidents. I wondered if this was divine punishment. I called an ambulance for them. The paramedics asked me to come along, but I said I was a stranger. Current regulations don't allow non-family members to accompany an ambulance. I gave them my husband's phone number. But I knew he wouldn't answer calls from unknown numbers. Why didn't you contact me? Because you didn't come back even when your parents-in-law passed away. I thought you wouldn't come back for a mere back pain. Don't compare your parents to mine. Your parents were strangers, but mine are family. Oh, that's reassuring to hear. Then you can take care of them well. Care? What do you mean? If they stay immobile for a long time at their age, they might become bedridden. Hearing that, my husband began to tremble. That's not true, is it? Well, do your best to care for them. They're your precious parents, after all. I have an important business trip. My parents are in a crisis. How can you go on a business trip? Are you even a wife? What? Hearing his words, I glared at him. The nerve of this man. He ignored my parents' death, and now he dares speak to me like this? But business trips are more important than family emergencies, right? That's what you taught me. That's... He probably never imagined his own parents would end up in such a situation. Especially during his important business trip. If my in-laws had treated me well, I might have felt differently. But unfortunately, I felt no such inclination. I have my own issues to worry about. That's right, just like you said. My parents were my family, but your parents are strangers to me, so it doesn't concern me. But you're my wife. And what are you? Weren't you my husband? Even your colleagues were appalled. Colleagues? What are you talking about? Your boss attended the funeral. I had called his office since I couldn't reach him, suspecting something. I explained that my parents had passed away and I couldn't contact my husband, asking for his business trip location. It turned out he wasn't on a business trip but on paid leave. He had lied and gone somewhere. The reason he lied and went away is clear. That's why he insisted so much that I shouldn't contact him. I hear you were on leave, not a business trip. Where and with whom did you go out, I wonder? That is... Your colleagues were also puzzled about where you were during my parents' funeral. You'll probably be asked when you return to work. My husband was pale. Though taking leave wasn't an issue. It'd be difficult to excuse his unavailability during such a situation. Adding to that, his parents might become bedridden. It seems he finally woke up to reality after the enjoyable trip he had. Anyway, take care of my parents. It's your job as a wife. I've decided to quit being your wife. I stayed here just to tell you that. And my long business trip isn't a lie. Unlike you, I don't lie. Quit? What do you mean? I'm divorcing you. I presented him with the already filled out divorce papers. As you can see, I've already moved my belongings to my parents' house. Then who will take care of my parents? Obviously, their son, you. I can't do it. That's not my concern. Leaving my stunned husband behind, I left the house and returned to my parents' home, where their portraits were waiting. I had checked his computer before he came back. I had never snooped on his computer, so he was likely unguarded. There were plenty of photos with his mistress and hotel bookings, including the companion's name. I printed everything out, which made the divorce process smooth. I demanded compensation from both him and his mistress. My husband, now my ex-husband, became infamous in his company for missing his in-laws' funeral for an affair. He was criticized by his boss and colleagues, making his job untenable, so he quit. The affair also ended, and his mistress left him amid the turmoil of the job loss and compensation claims. A month later, my ex-in-laws returned from the hospital and are now bedridden at home. They refuse to do rehabilitation, so they are likely to stay bedridden, though they have pensions and savings. My ex-husband couldn't find a new job and is barely making ends meet with part-time work, unable to leave the house. He called me, crying, asking me to come back because of constant arguments with his parents. His parents also contacted me, saying his care isn't enough and asked me to return. When I suggested hiring a helper with their money, they refused, not wanting to spend it without knowing how long this situation would last. Their words made me realize they hadn't changed, even after all this. I never want to be involved with them again. I still cry when I think of my kind parents, but I can't keep weeping. I don't want my departed parents to worry. After a year of memorial service, I'll go on a long business trip abroad. I plan to start anew and live positively, keeping the memory of my parents and a smile on my face.